historian from the Boston Conservatory at Berklee. For folks who haven't heard of the Boston Conservatory at Berklee, I describe it as sitting in the shadow of Fenway Park. Perhaps you've heard of Fenway Park and that distant southern suburb of Andover down in Boston. Most days of the week there, I talk about subjects in music history, but I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about the program that the New England Classical Singers are going to bring for us. It's a combination of two sort of cornerstone pieces, Marc-Antoine Charpentier's Mass for Christmas, and then a collection of 4 pieces by Francis Poulenc. So we have a piece from the very tail end of the 17th century and then the heart of the 20th century. And my goal really over the next, we'll call it 28, maybe 29 minutes if I get really excited, is to talk a little bit about the music that you'll hear, to talk a little bit about the individuals who composed it, all with a greater goal of providing you with a richer, more satisfying encounter with the music in performance. Along those lines, I'll also suggest a few things to listen for along the way, so that as you're in the concert, you'll have sort of memories of some of the things that we've talked about to sort of guide your encounter. So I think the first thing that I want to start with is the Charpentier Mass for Christmas. This piece was written in 1694 by Marc-Antoine Charpentier, a very well-known French composer of the 17th century. Marc-Antoine Charpentier is French-born. He's Italian-trained, like so many musicians during that day. He recognizes that Italy is the heart of musical activity in the 17th century. I often liken it to the Silicon Valley of music in the 17th century. And so it becomes a magnet for musicians, for artists all over Western Europe. And so it's no surprise at all that Marc-Antoine Charpentier, as a French-born musician, studies, at least for a short time, in Italy, specifically in Rome. And he internalizes, he absorbs so many characteristics of the Italian style. And we'll see those in the work that he composed for the Église Saint-Louis, the Church of St. Louis. That's where this work was originally performed in 1694. It was a Jesuit church in the heart of Paris. And it's a mass. A mass is a genre of music, and the mass is an ancient genre. The very earliest masses were composed by these nameless monks. Their names have been forgotten to history, but the melodies have been handed down in the form of Gregorian chants. The earliest masses come to us from that age of that prehistory, pre-notation at least, pre-music history. And the masses continue to be composed today, not only for liturgical or for sacred performance, but also for concert performance, like we'll experience them today. It's a mass, it's a genre in 5 parts. There are 5 sections, 5 movements to the mass: the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Credo, the Sanctus, and the Agnus Dei. We'll hear all 5 parts in concert today. But I think what makes Charpentier's Mass really remarkable is the way that he folds in to that 5-part structure 10 French Christmas carols. That's really the appeal of Charpentier's Mass. I think it's one of the principal reasons why it's still performed today, is because of the way that he's baked in these Christmas carols to make this Mass particularly suitable for performance at Christmas time. The carols would have been recognized immediately by listeners as well-known Christmas carols of their time. And I can give you an example of that. So what we'll do first is we'll listen to a little bit of music, a French Christmas carol from the 17th century. The text is Joseph est bien marié. Joseph, that is the spouse of Mary, is well married. And the text, this will be familiar to us, to those folks who are familiar with the story of Jesus and his birth. Joseph est bien marié. Joseph is indeed married to the daughter of Jesse. It was truly a new thing to be mother and virgin at once. God has operated a miracle. So right in the first verse, we begin to engage with that great mystery of Christ's birth. How is it that Mary both virgin and mother. This is the thing they're wrestling with. How exactly does that work? And Joseph, he's having some trouble understanding, comprehending how exactly this mystery has come to pass. So he needs some assistance. When it was that God wanted to save us sinners, he made his only son, Jesus, descend to earth to take Mary and humanity. That's the second verse. Joseph is indeed married. Joseph est bien marié. Each verse ends with that refrain. When Joseph understood that his wife was pregnant, he was not very happy. He was angry toward Mary. As I say, he's having trouble sort of comprehending this miraculous gesture. And he wanted to go away. But an angel did tell him, Joseph, be not angry. Your holy wife Mary is pregnant with the fruit of life. She is pregnant without sin. Joseph est bien marié. So this is a Christmas carol that was known to Charpentier's listeners, and I'm going to introduce it to you. This is what the original carol sounds like. Joseph est bien marié. Joseph is well married, right? Verse 2. So this is a catchy melody. It burrows into your mind's ear. Isn't that right? This is going to stick with you. And Charpentier integrates this into the first movement of his 5-part Mass. The first movement is the Kyrie. The Kyrie text is, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. It's a plea. But underneath we have this familiar melody which sets that plea within a specifically Christmas time context. Now, the opening of the movement begins with a direct quotation of Joseph est bien marié, played by the instruments. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, no words. And then it will migrate to the voices. You'll hear it in the soprano. It will be imitated by the tenors. The tenors will repeat it. It will be imitated again by the sopranos. But it won't be Joseph est bien marié. It'll be the text of the Mass. Kyrie eleison. See if you can hear that in this example. First, the instruments. This will be my soprano hand, and this will be my tenor hand. I'll cue the voices in the melody. Ready? Here we go. And now the tenors. And so it goes. You can hear the way that this carol is integrated into the sacred context. But here's what Charpentier won't tell you. Here's what you won't read in the program notes, is that there's a little bit of naughtiness that's been integrated into this. There's a little bit of scandal that I want to share with you. You'll have the insider perspective when you go into the concert. Because Joseph est bien marié is not the way that melody, that's not the way that melody began life. It has a very secular origin that I want to share with you. It's from a text of a children's song. It's called Quand Biron, that's a person, Biron, he's like an authority figure. Quand Biron voulait danser. When Biron wants to dance, this is the melody. And then the song takes on the form of like the 12 days of Christmas. He gets his sword, he gets his fine shirt, he puts on his wig. He does all of these things to prepare to dance because, as it turns out, Biron, at least as we believe, has this deformity that makes him a very poor dancer. So he puts on all of these delay tactics so that he doesn't have to dance. And this is a children's song sung by French children. The text, Quand Biron voulait danser, ses souliers fit apporter. In English, when Biron wanted to dance, his shoes were brought, and his round hat was brought. You will dance, Biron, and then there's a second verse, and we begin to add on items that are brought to him before he can do any dancing. In the second verse, his shirt from Venice, sa chemise de Venise, is brought. And then in the subsequent verses, he has his fashionable breeches brought to him. I'm wearing my fashionable breeches in case there's any question. His beautiful sequin jacket, that I left at home. His Turkish wig, his very well-made cuffs, his épée effilée, his sharpened sword. These are all the things that he needs in order to dance. But what I want you to hear is the melody, the very secular origin of this melody. Quand Biron voulait danser. You'll hear here's verse 2. Now we begin adding things. His shirt from Venice. As I say, this song is a song that has a bit of that character of the 12 Days of Christmas, which each successive verse, the itemized list gets longer and longer and longer and longer, and so that's the sort of the gimmick of Quand Biron voulait danser. Now, I describe this as scandalous or somewhat naughty behavior because in the Catholic Church there is a firm prohibition against the import of secular melodies into religious music. This had been in place since the Council of Trent in the 16th century. We may not remember the Council of Trent from our history classes or from our theology classes, but this was a major counter-Reformation type of moment in the Catholic Church where they began to think about what it meant to be Catholic and how to practice Catholicism in the 16th century, and they set a whole host of firm guidelines about what you should and should not do. So I'm bringing to you from the decrees of the Council of Trent what they have to say about music. They say, things to be observed and to be avoided in the celebration of the Mass. Irreverence may be avoided. Do not allow any wandering or unknown priest to celebrate Mass. Anyone who is publicly and notoriously a criminal should not be allowed to assist at the sacred services. This next one's my favorite. This is the dress code. Unless those who are present shall have first declared by their decently composed external appearance that they are not present there in body only, but also in mind and devout affection of heart. So you've got to be well dressed because it's a reflection of your internal composure and your readiness to hear Mass. And here's what they have to say about music. They shall also keep from the churches all those kinds of music in which, whether by the organ or in singing, there is mixed up anything lascivious. I'm not sure there's anything lascivious in Quand Biron voulait danser. Lascivious or impure, that is secular or non-sacred. And so Charpentier is in the midst of integrating these 10 carols into the context of the Mass for Christmas. He's also bringing in all the history all the non-sacred associations that come with those carols as well. And so as we hear these popular melodies, as we hear these Christmas carols, and we think about the appropriateness of listening to Christmas carols in a Christmas Mass at Christmas time, we who have been here for the lecture before the concert will also know that there's something a little more hiding behind those innocuous melodies, right? Joseph et bien Marie also has other text, which is a little bit more controversial. Now, I do want to say one other thing about the Charpentier Mass. I described Marc-Antoine Charpentier as a Frenchman who was trained as a musician in Italy, and actually he brings with him into this Mass some of his schoolboy lessons that he learned as a music student in Italy. And so I want to call your attention to some of those as well. The Italians in the 17th century really made their mark. They were most influential because of their interest, we'll call it obsession, with emphasizing text through music that dramatizes, that amplifies, that intensifies the listener's experience with the performance. This was something that they're very interested in doing, using music to amplify or intensify or dramatize text. Now, I'll give you a couple of simple examples. So, there's a moment in the Mass, this comes in the credo, the creed, where we sort of declare what we believe. We believe that Christ descended from heaven and then descended after his crucifixion into hell and was risen on the third day. That's one of the principal tenets of Catholicism, right? And so this text in the Italian, which is how we'll encounter it in the concert, is descendit. Descendit. Descendit is the text. Descends. He descends. And we'll hear actually the melody that Charpentier writes for that word, descending. It's like if we were to set Jack and Jill run up the hill to fetch a pail of water, and our melody that we used to set that to music were to move upward. This word is descendit, and it moves downward. See if you can't hear that in all voices of the choir. This is from the credo of the Charpentier Mass. Descendit. Here it comes. So if you can hear that, and if you can understand how that, I think, admittedly simple principle works, now we can begin to look at the more advanced strategies, the more advanced applications, because there are other ways that Italian composers, and Charpentier as an Italian-trained composer, explored and experimented with these approaches to setting text to music. Here's one that's a little bit more complicated. There's another moment in the Gloria. This is an adulatory text. We praise you, God. We glorify you. The entire movement is concerned with adulation. And one of the reasons that we glorify God in the Gloria movement is because he takes away the sins of the world. He has mercy upon sinners. Miserere nobis is the Latin text. Have mercy on us, the text says. And this seems to be a point of interest for Charpentier. He really wants to emphasize the sort of miracle of God's mercy, because miserere nobis is repeated over and over and over again. You'll hear that repetition. You'll feel the increased intensity each time it repeats. So again, this is a little bit more complicated than just simply having a melody move down on the word descendit. That repetition, that emphasis through repetition is the key here. Have a listen. I'll cue you when we hear the text. Here. Miserere. Miserere. We get it 3 times. Here it comes again without me talking through it this time. when you listen to that passage in the context of the performance, when the text doesn't repeat, that repetition stands out. That emphasis on God's mercy stands out in the performance, and you'll hear that. You'll hear the intensity of that plea. Miserere, miserere nobis, over and over again, that sort of pleading. And Charpentier does this again in a time that one of my favorite moments in the entire Mass. So I'm going to jump back to the Credo movement, the middle movement, the moment where we announce what we believe as Catholic believers. There's this wonderful moment that I want to share where we have emphasis that's repeated, but each time it's repeated, it's one step higher, it's one step higher, it's one step higher, as if to sort of give us that increased inflection. And we do this with children, right? You know, I tell my 6-year-old daughter, her name's Adeline, I say, Adeline, I'd like you to brush your teeth. And when she doesn't do that, the second time I repeat it at a heightened tone, Adeline, I'd like you to brush your teeth. And while I won't share with you what I say to her the third time, you can imagine an even higher and more exasperated tone coming from her father, who simply wants the girl to practice good dental hygiene, right? So we get the same thing, et homo factus est, and he became man. This is one of the central tenets of Catholic theology. This idea of the incarnation. And of course it's so important in a Christmas Mass, because what are we celebrating other than Christ's birth? Et homo factus est. I'll give you a couple of measures leading into that, and then once again I'll be your conductor. I'll cue you on the repetition. More seconds. Here we go. Et homo factus est. It begins in the tenor. Again in the tenor, but higher now. Now it comes in the soprano, the most dramatic of all. And a little trill there at the end, just to make sure that our attention is called to that moment. And that's a subtle one, but with each repetition it gets higher and higher and higher. And so this is that Italian influence that we find in the Charpentier Mass. And this emphasis on dramatizing or intensifying or amplifying the text is not restricted to the Charpentier. The Francis Poulenc piece that's also on the program, the 4 pieces for Christmas, these are 4 separate pieces for Christmas, which Francis Poulenc wrote between 1951 and 1952. These also exhibit that feature. So this is not something that's just restricted to 17th century Italy and France, but this is a tenet of good, effective musical writing all the way through to the 20th century as well. And so I want to call your attention to that. Francis Poulenc, another French composer, he's born in 1899, so in the waning moments of the 19th century, he is, for all intents and purposes, a 20th century composer. As a young man, he comes up listening to Claude Debussy, the music of Claude Debussy. Perhaps you've heard of Debussy. Debussy is known for his impressionism. And as a grumpy teenager, Poulenc and his friends decide we're not going to write in this style. We're going to do something new. And it's as much a sort of reaction to the success that Debussy is experiencing than anything else. But he and 5 of his closest friends gather together. They're a group of composers known as the 6. not a terribly descriptive or creative name, but they're known as the Sixth, and they're sort of, they come together, they gather around this idea of composing in a style which is not the style of Claude Debussy. And so as a young man, Francis Poulenc makes his name in the major secular and instrumental genres of his day, composing in a style which is not impressionist. I could go on for a long time about Francis Poulenc, but in the 1930s he turns toward religion upon the sudden and unexpected death of a very close friend. He turns back to religion after a period of atheism. And so he comes back to religion, he begins composing religious pieces, and these 4 pieces for Christmas are part of that larger project that occupies him for several decades from the middle of the 1930s through the 1950s. Francis Poulenc dies in the 1960s. But these 4 pieces, the thing that I want to call your attention to is once again the way that Poulenc, now using his 20th century musical language, emphasizes text, dramatizes text through music. There are 4 pieces, 4 motets, and I'm going to talk about the first 2. The first one is O Magnum Mysterium, O Great Mystery. Now there are a number of great mysteries in Catholicism. But the one that we're referencing here is this one that I mentioned earlier, this idea of the Savior of the world being born of a virgin, right? O Magnum Mysterium. And this occupies the mind not only of Joseph et bien Marie. You remember Joseph was a little skeptical about Mary's story. Poulenc is also curious about the great mystery, and we can tell by the way that he treats this text in his musical setting. He gives it to us 3 times. He doesn't repeat the entire text 3 times, but he repeats the opening incipit, the opening words, O Magnum Mysterium, 3 times, but each one is set a little bit differently, a little bit of a different harmonic landscape or soundscape, if you will. And with each one, he gives us just a slightly different perspective. I want you to listen for those 3 statements of O Magnum Mysterium. I'm going to give you the first 2 so that you know what you're listening for. Here comes the second one, and notice how the sound is just a little bit different. The melody's the same. But the voices that accompany, like a turn of the kaleidoscope, they're just a little bit different. And there's a third repetition as well that I'll have you listen for in the concert. And that third one is the most different still. But we get that same melody each and every time, always in the soprano, always set high in the soprano. And the New England classical singers, I don't know if you know their soprano section, but they are fabulous. I mean, all the sections are fabulous. But like Animal Farm, this one is even more fabulous than the others. And they have this beautiful, pure, crystalline tone. So you're really in for a treat when they sing that high melodic line, and the voices underneath have the challenge of giving it a different color, a different soundscape with each repetition. So listen for that in the first of the 4 Poulenc motets. Now the thing that I want to leave you with is the second motet. Quem vidistis is the title of this second motet. And this is a moment where the choir asks the shepherds who were present at Jesus' birth. They say, who did you see? We weren't there. Tell us who you saw. And there's this beautiful lyrical melody when they're asking that question, who you saw. And the shepherds respond, they say, you won't believe it. We saw the newborn son. We saw the angels. And then the choir is they are absolutely flabbergasted, right? They can't believe it. And then then it becomes more emphatic. Tell us what you saw. Announce to us.
Christ's birth. And the passion of those pleas, set in the context of this four-part choral writing, is something that I want you to hear in advance so that when you go into the concert, you get the full effect. So first, the sort of lyrical, who was it that was there? The genuine curiosity. Quem vidistis, motet number 2. So to tell you what's going on here, the shepherds have just said, we saw the angels, we heard about the arrival of Christ. Dominum is the text. And the response from the choirs, Dicite, tell us what you've seen. And then the tenors have this wonderfully sort of operatic moment. I'll call your attention to their part because they sound almost like trumpets sounding. I'll play it for you the first time, then you'll suffer through me singing it once, and then we'll play it again. Et annunciate Christi. The tenors, they're almost like, operatic tenors. You could almost imagine like 19th century Puccini or something, the intensity of the voices there. Listen to it again. They cry out, they announce the arrival of Christ. It seems they're excited about this. So whether it's music from the 20th century or music from the end of the 17th century, I invite you to tune your ears to this way in which these two composers dramatize the text through their musical setting. I'll also encourage you to keep an ear out for the slightly scandalous as well. I hope you enjoy the concert. Thank you very much.
now it's your turn. So we've sprinkled through a couple of carols the first half for you to participate with. So the first one is the First Noel. I would ask you to rise if you are able. For this one, the middle one, you get to rest. And the last one will rise again. Okay, so please stand for the First Noel 3 verses which are in your program. you get a sort of a busman's holiday. You get to sing, but you get to sit and sing. Okay? repeat one more time. Stand if you are able. 3 verses of Angels We Have Heard on Earth. Second half of the program, the Charpentier Christmas Mass, is based on familiar carols from the 15th and 16th century. So to start off the second half, we're going to sing for you a few of those carols that are the basis of peace. So you will hear these carols and you should try to hear the carols as they are set in the midst of the Mass. So we'll do those first, I'll take a little break to tune, and then we will do the Mass. Okay?
Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Le